Andy, and thanks all of you for joining us today. Again, I'm Kirk Facker with Syntrax. I'm joined importantly by Semil Solanki, who's the solution consultant. And how we're going to run this today is I'm going to talk you through the actions undertaken by Semil, and we're going to just run through the agenda briefly. The first demo we're going to do is going to be designed more for internal Compleo use cases. What we're going to be talking about is a more crowd-friendly approach to that. We're going to look at Compleo in a private cloud, interacting with remote users who are not clouded. And we're going to then also touch on a new way of approaching documents that Compleo generates or touches in some fashion, and cover a very few smaller features that were thrown in with Compleo 7, one of which is versioning. Then we're going to jump into a second demo that's more customer-facing or partner-facing. In that one, we're going to go through some of our new connectivity. We have connectors to AWS, DocuSign, SAP Cloud Platform, among others. We're going to use a couple of those in the demo and talk through all of that at the end. And we're going to show one more feature called bricking, which is a useful feature to group information together for reuse elsewhere. And then, time allowing and your attention permitting, we'll get through some questions and answers at the end. Okay, so right now we're going to walk through this slide. And so we're going to start off on the left side of the screen and start off at the Explorer user. And unlike the traditional Compleo architecture, this is going to be a designer that's not on-prem with Compleo. They're going to be accessing a sandbox of templates stored in a cloud. And we're going to watch that user modify a template and test it and then deploy to production, all from his or her laptop. Once the new template is deployed, we're going to see Compleo process the information coming from ERP in a new way, rather than simply spitting out attachments and leaving them somewhere. The files are going to be stored into a document repository. In this case, it's going to be Archiver, but that's equally possible to do with a range of other document platforms, and we'll talk about that. The end users are going to get email alerts that this has all happened, and we have two use cases there. One, a business user running an ad hoc report and retrieving it from Archiver, and a second use case where a rolled up set of reports is delivered to one person via one email with multiple links in it. So we're going to start here in Archiver, and Archiver is our document repository. What you're seeing on the screen are some historical reports, not done today, but other days. And this screen is going to be refreshed now, and we're going to look at the fact that today there's no reports yet processed. And in the course of the demo, we're going to actually create some reports, then we'll circle back to them later on. At this point, we're looking at a database manager connection that simply demonstrates that rather than connecting to an on-premise Compleo instance, we're in the cloud, and we're using a SQL server, in this case running on AWS. It could be some other cloud platform. And as you can see, rather than a named machine, we're accessing the instance in database mode instead of a specific SQL machine. Okay, now we're going to jump into the end user view. And this is Explorer, which many of you already use, nothing new there. We're going to navigate to the template that's currently in production. And here we see that, okay, go ahead and grab it. We have 3 run modes in place. This is the legacy process that we're going to be improving. You can see that there's a run mode that creates Excel files and PDFs, a second run mode that drops those documents once created into a shared folder where users on the local area network can navigate them and use them. And finally, we're going to print some hard copies. That's the legacy process that we're going to look towards improving. So jumping into kind of the newer idea, We're looking at the same run mode to create the documents, but rather than just drop them into a network share, we're going to actually file them to a document archive and dispatch links to the users so they can retrieve them at will, or if they prefer, search for them later. And then just to maintain compatibility with the legacy process, we're going to keep on dropping them into file folders for people who don't want to change. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and launch that, put that into production. And then jump back into the old green screen that's really hard to get away from for us iSeries people. So this is typically a process, as I'm sure many of you know, that's run automatically. What we're doing here instead is we're going to go ahead and do some manual print jobs for the sake of this demo. So Semil is now just releasing those into the production environment so we can grab them from Supervisor, which by now is already processing them. And you can follow the process along in Supervisor. That circle there on the right will turn more green as the documents are further processed. Now we're just jumping into the configurations area. And as you can see, and we're going to get deeper into this later on, there's two scenarios running. One of them that's going to do a very simple trick, which is to produce one report file and send it out as an email to one user as a link. And the second one is going to do a more robust thing, which is to compile multiple reports into the same single email and make them each available via a single link in the same email. Now we're jumping into Resource Explorer, and this is a feature of other Compleo versions, but it's a bit more robust in Compleo 7. We have different folders to store your templates, whether they be Explorer templates, as we're doing now. We have a forms solution for those of you that don't know that can manipulate customer-facing documents. And what we're going to do now is actually go into the graphics folder and import a new logo from the desktop. So now we're back at the remote user's desktop, and we're going to insert the latest Compleo Syntrax logo into the Resource Center. And the point of that is to be able to revise the centralized assets such that any template that can touch the centralized resources can use these resources. And we'll kind of get into why and how that's useful as we get through the demo. Okay, now we're jumping into the email itself. This is the single report delivered to one user. We've grabbed some metadata showing how many pages the report file is and the date. Any metadata from the spool file can be inserted here. The link there you see is called a GUID, which is a global unique identifier. That's generated by Compleo on the fly, and that, when clicked, will access the report that was just created by Supervisor and Explorer. So in this case, the link was to an Excel file. We don't want to open that now, but just to give you the idea that this has been done, we're going to jump back into Archiver again, and we're going to look again at the refresh view of today's reports. And here you can see that Supervisor's been busy. It's made 4 reports. The one that we just clicked shows as clicked partially. The feature behind that is that you can send one document as unique links to multiple people. So that's a new feature as well that we're not going to deeply get into today, but it's very useful for invoicing or proposals, where you can tell not just whether someone clicked, but specifically who. And if you send it to multiple people, you can see of those people that received the email, which ones have accessed it, which is quite useful. So you can see that's the one that's been opened. There's 3 others that we haven't touched yet. And as you can see, they're both Excel for data manipulation and PDF for ease of access through a web browser. Since we're in Supervisor, we're going to jump over, I think, to show the Supervisor tab of Compleo Console. So one of the nice features, again, of Compleo 7 and how we're delivering it is we're delivering it as a web-friendly suite, platform as a service. And now we're looking at the same kind of Supervisor processes tab that you might have on Windows Server somewhere. You have a web view into that as well, showing the most recent activity. We also importantly can restart and stop supervisor remotely from this web console. So if you are working from home someday or on a weekend, you can just pull out your smartphone of choice and get this done. As you notice, there's actually 2 supervisor instances. Compleo 7, really as a default configuration, we recommend high availability. So here you see the production instance of supervisor happily running. The backup is stopped. We're not going to start the backup, but you could actually switch from backup to live from the same screen if you so desired. Okay, now we're jumping back into the email IDF. This is going to be the email that we're going to be looking at shortly. This is a more complex email, and as you can see, the server settings up there, we're using Office 365 in the cloud. We're doing this typically as a batch process, so the reports you're seeing today typically wouldn't be run ad hoc, but we did that just for the sake of the demo. And at this point, I think we can jump into the process. We're going to run it and then jump into how this email is constructed. So essentially, a very robust process is running in the background now that compiles multiple data sources into one email. And this is the magic here. This query variable is responsible for grabbing the data from different places and assembling a well-formatted email with multiple links that point back to each document that is being processed. At this point, we already have the email. It was that fast. So each of these, this is one email to me in this case, and these are the 4 typically monthly or weekly reports that might get run, and they're run as PDF. As you can see, we're using the new logo now. And they're run again as an Excel file for folks that want to dig into the weeds a bit and look at the rows themselves and so forth. We talk a lot about metadata. Here we're using it not just for Archiver, for the ability to search from within our system, but really importantly, we want to make our system agnostic. So we also stamp the metadata into the document itself so it can be searched as free text or as a more organized search from outside of Compleo or outside the ERP system. And that really effectively makes the document unique and permanently associated with the data you just stamped in there. So this is a complex demo, so there's a couple of moving parts here, but we're going to just do a quick recap of what we just saw. So we have to click through each thing. So just kind of recap what we showed you: improved document distribution using a cloud repository. We leveraged our unique URL capabilities to share information with different types of business users. We made sure the metadata was inserted properly in the documents for searching outside of our own interface. We showed you connectivity with legacy systems, and also that same connectivity can be used for other third-party applications via cloud connectivity. We kind of showed off our PaaS, platform as a service architecture that runs equally happily on-premise and in the cloud. We showed a very important and nice new feature of Compleo 7 as you guys all that run iSeries in particular kind of get ready to make the move to whether a virtual environment or a more of a hybrid cloud structure. Your remote users don't have to be on site with Compleo any longer, so that's something that we think is a very nice addition. And we showed off a little bit of our high availability architecture that lets you more easily jump between the production environment and the backup from a web browser. And of course, as part of that, we used our web console that lets you get at that information from outside the business. So now we're going to walk through the second demo, again, just high-level architecture here. This is a particular use case that could be applied multiple ways. In the way you're going to see it, we're connecting our own CRM system, which is Microsoft Dynamics, to Compleo, but that could equally be SAP or any ERP. It could be Salesforce.com. We don't care. And from that sales view, in this case, the salesperson from their CRM in this case, they're going to actually send out a legal agreement, what we call a SLA, software license agreement. And that's going to be done through a connector to DocuSign. So once they send the SLA from CRM, DocuSign wakes up and sends the end user the email with the link to the document. That's something we leverage. Once they open and sign it, rather than using DocuSign to complete the whole circle, we've inserted a step here that allows the business, the selling organization, to review it in a more robust way and leverage the connectivity with the ERP to file the finished contract back into the ERP or the CRM. So without further ado, we're going to get right into the demo. But we're going to assume for the purpose of the demo here that the customer has already agreed to purchase something or license something from us. So what Samil is doing now is he's initiating a batch process from within CRM through our Dynamics connector that sends an XML file out to a share that Compleo Supervisor is monitoring. And here's the results. So we're looking at the original view now. So this is a standard XML file, not something that you're going to get someone to sign easily without a lot of, interpretation. So now we're using a module called Compleo Designer to reformat the information into what some of you will recognize as our standard sales order. So this is how we roll now with our sales orders. We use this connectivity to produce the SLA. And what Samil is now doing is he's showing off a feature called bricking. Bricking allows you to group information that is eligible to be reused. So essentially, in this case, we're going to group the logo with some of the generic company information down below, and we're going to save this as a brick, brand new in Compleo 7. And at this point, we're going to save it to a shared file location so it can be used by others. We do recommend that you don't create random names for these bricks because otherwise they're just another brick in the wall. So you want to come with a standard, and in this case, we're going to say company info. So if someone other than and Samil wants to use this later, they'll be able to figure out what exactly the brick might contain. And by now, I'm pretty confident that Compleo has done its work, and we should be getting an email. So we've jumped over to the customer view. So Compleo Supervisor has taken the template, made the email, and passed it through to DocuSign. The customer now is using a very recognizable DocuSign workflow to sign off on the order. And this is something we're doing inside our own business, as some of you do know, as I've mentioned before. So at this point, all they're going to do is click to sign it. And at this point, we're actually jumping out of the traditional DocuSign idea. So rather than using DocuSign on the sales end, we're going to actually pass the customer executed agreement back to Compleo to process further. So at this point, and this takes a moment or two, the DocuSign email has been received by the sales organization. You can see now that the customer signature is there, and the Syntrax signature is blank. So rather than use DocuSign end-to-end, we're going to go ahead and use our own digital ink signature. Just to quickly pause on this, Compleo 7 allows you to very specifically position a signature exactly where you want it to go, just like DocuSign. So we're going to stamp that, and it just goes right to the right spot. It's not yet dated, so we have the date from DocuSign of when the customer signed it. Once I click OK, then it will apply the date stamp to the document. So at this point, behind the scenes, after I've authorized it, the document is back in Archiver, and we're looking at where we keep our contracts now. and we're waiting for Archiver to, so we'll keep talking until it finds it. But essentially what's going to happen is that once the approved document is processed by supervisor, it goes back into Archiver with, and there it is, with all the metadata that we want. And some of the stuff we captured there is where you see document ID. We stamp the customer name in there so we can easily find it. You could argue that you could find it anyway, but one of the benefits of having a document repository with metadata is that you don't just have it for one function, in this case sales. It might well be the case that accounting wants to pull up that document, or maybe the legal wants to check the terms and conditions, or it might be that the support or operations department wants to verify what's been sold. So we make this document easily searchable using metadata to tag it appropriately. The last step in the process is the email notification to the sales rep. So essentially once I've signed it and once it's been filed back into the repository, again, we use Archiver, but it could be anything. The last step of the workflow is for the selling rep to get notified. So here Samil has received notification that all parties have executed the agreement, and he can click here to retrieve it from Archiver. And let's do that so we can see the final finished product. And there it is. So just scrolling down a bit, you can see that all parties have signed, and whereas I didn't date stamp it, as soon as I hit the approval, the date stamp was applied by Compleo. So this is the finished copy. It has been filed in our system of record, which in our case would be Dynamics CRM. But in the case of many of you that have other systems, that same information, whether as a physical attachment or as we would recommend as a link, has been associated back to that document. So now we're going to jump back into the deck for just a recap. So just kind of saying what you saw, the latest demo, we hope showed you how to customize information for creating new or improved workflows, customer-facing workflows. Part of that process is better connectivity with third-party solutions. We demonstrated most importantly today the DocuSign integration, but we have, again, connectors for AWS, SAP Cloud Platform, and other systems that can be used to do similar things. We've actually dipped into some of the new Compleo 7 features, the easy placement of a signature to the right spot on the page. We didn't really cover this in the demo, but just know that you can also put ink initials. So typically you want to sign the first page of something or the last page, but it's often necessary to initial each page, and that's something we've built into the features of Compleo 7. The bricking feature we showed you in the most recent demo, and the versioning feature we showed you in the first demo.